And now, Fastened Like Nails with Dr. Mark Hamby.
Well, Molly, here we go again. This is going to be another sababa.
Oh, is sababa.
And for our listeners that are not familiar with that term, sababa means?
Awesome.
Awesome.
This word is hilarious because I thought it was Hebrew when we first heard it from our tour guide in Israel. And then someone else said, no, it's Aramaic. It's like one of the only Aramaic words ever. And then you were talking to a general and he was like, oh, yeah, no, your tour guide made that up. And then it's like been coined and officially a word now.
Yep, sababa, which means
sababa.
Basically,
Awesome, sweet,
in
bomb.
every manner of speaking. This is awesome. And today's lesson is awesome because it is the final lesson of the wisdom lessons.
That's not awesome. That's
I think it is.
basa, which is the sadness.
No sadness. We go on to something new. But this last lesson is known as the epilogue. So the 12 lessons have already occurred. This is not the 12th lesson. This is the lesson that is the conclusion. So you have an introduction that took place in Proverbs 1 through 7. That was the introduction. The first lesson was, obey your father's correction and don't neglect your mother's Torah, mother's teaching. That was the first lesson. But before the first lesson, all of the 12 lessons are built upon the introduction. And the introduction was there are 5 people. Remember the 5 people?
The simple, the knowledgeable, the wise. Then on the other side you have
after wise.
The understanding, man of understanding.
The discerning ones.
Oh, yeah.
And then on the other end of the spectrum.
Flip side, yeah. So then I guess you start with the simple person again, and if they're not growing and becoming a man of wisdom, then they go in the opposite way, and then they become a fool, a mocker, and then a scorner.
Well, the mocker and the scorner would be one and the same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's either you are a simple person, naive, thoughtless, gullible,
easily enticed,
follows the crowd, simple to foolish, who hate knowledge, or then a mocker, who is the one that is, he's got
always
issues.
Putting others
he
down.
Delights in his mocking.
So the mocker they're always putting other people down to lift themselves up. While on the opposite side, you have someone who's humble, who is always lifting other people up, and in so doing, God lifts him up.
And accepting correction along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the way you grow from simple to knowledgeable youth to wise to discerning.
Which I love that we talk about that idea, because before coming here, I hadn't really heard that expressed in such a way, because that's such a beautiful worldview to take with you, that accepting correction and learning to admit that you're wrong is actually paving the path to wisdom and more knowledge and a more full and rich life, instead of it always being looked at as this negative thing, like I'm always doing things wrong. I'm always, instead of beating yourself up or getting discouraged or angry. For me, I think usually if someone's saying I'm doing something wrong, my knee-jerk reaction is no, I'm not. But to actually take a moment and to think things through, and to be if I accept this, if what you're saying is true and I accept this, then I'm growing. And that is amazing.
Folks, I wish you could see Molly's face right now. She's shining. Molly, what's really beautiful about all of this is that, I've had the privilege of being your teacher. I've had the privilege of mentoring you. And now to see you grasp this incredible truth. This is one of the primary truths that we teach here. And, as you continue to grow in wherever God leads you in this life, to know that you have that incredible principle that's, etched into your life, into your being is amazing.
I'm very, very thankful for that, and also just the wisdom lessons in general, because there have been times, the temptation and the struggle and the fight doesn't get easier, because sometimes, I don't know, I feel like, you get harder and God entrusts you with deeper struggles and things like that along the way. But then, recently, this morning, I started to get a little discouraged, and then the Lord brought to my mind something that you'd said, that God allows everything to happen for a reason, and if I can trust that He's got me every step of the way, then I can trust that He's allowed this to happen, and it's going to be the best. Colin Smith said something one time in one of his lessons that blew me away, and he said that God always wants the best for you. And so in this moment, whatever it is, whether it's something you like or dislike, that doesn't matter, because you can trust that God has given you the best thing for you at this moment. And whether that's like struggling with something or suffering or maybe not getting something that you think you deserve or even getting something that you do deserve, either way, you can trust that God's kind of, He's got you.
Do you remember what Colin said when we were in Israel? The whole team, we had 36 of us, and he gave that devotion that morning, and he said, if you're here, which everyone was there.
Oh, yeah. Yep, you're here by divine appointment.
You're here because you're loved.
Oh.
You don't remember that?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, that was amazing. He looked at, and I remember Lily taking that in, and it was like, wow, I'm here not because I paid money to be here. I'm not here because I got my passport in time. I'm here because I'm loved.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And that's the way God is with these 5 people. You know, God's trying to get their attention. He's trying to wake them up. And to say, like, I've got something for you. In these 12 lessons, I mean, by the time you get to lesson 10, God is saying, through wisdom is saying, like, I've got so much for you that it doesn't compare to anything in the world, in the universe.
Well, yeah, in Proverbs says that nothing that you desire can be compared to her.
Yeah.
Not gold, not silver, not
She's
fame,
a what?
success.
She's a tree of life.
Yeah, to those who grab hold of her.
Yeah, and not just grab hold of her, those that hold on to her and don't let go. You know, because you got to believe that you're here because God has a plan for your life, and He wants to bless you. Devotions this morning was kind of cool.
Yeah.
God wants to take pleasure in us, and God wants us to take pleasure in Him.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion. Before the conclusion, those 5 people that we're introduced with in Proverbs chapter 1, the hinge statement before we have the start of the first lesson, which is obey your father's correction, don't neglect your mother's Torah teaching, and then choose your friends wisely, and turn when you're corrected, and I'll pour out my spirit, I'll make my words known to you. Before any of those lessons, they're all built on the foundation of the hinge statement that's in between the 5 characters and in between the first lesson.
Ooh.
And that hinge statement is, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and correction. Correction. Yeah, the word instruction should always be translated, or most of the time be translated in the Bible as correction. And so all of life is determined how well you receive correction.
I think that's really cool because we just recently talked about the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so those 2 phrases are bookended in the whole wisdom lessons because...
like chapter 1, verse 7 and chapter 9, verse 10 frames this whole thing.
Yeah, and they're not exactly the same. So hopefully, the son has grown and he's advanced. And like now we saw and we talked about, now it is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now we read that. And then the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. And so you've got this beautiful structure about how important that is. And that kind of segues us into the conclusion.
Well, before we get to the conclusion, the knowledge that it's talking about in chapter 1, okay, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. That knowledge is the knowledge of what?
The Holy One, which you talked about in devotion.
Is Jesus.
Are we going to do another podcast on that, or should we?
I think we're going to get moving in other directions, actually.
Fun. Okay.
Okay, so that knowledge, the lessons of wisdom, leads us to a full understanding, a full knowledge of who the Lord Jesus is. Chapter 9, verse 10. And if you have that, he says, knowledge of the Holy One. And by the way, when the demons see Jesus, the very first thing they say is, guess what? Not who are you, but you Holy One of God, we know who you are. We know you, Holy One of God. You are the Holy One of God. This is almost right out of Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10.
Jesus is the Holy One.
Yeah, it's several times it refers to Jesus as the Holy One. And this is key. After it says that, it says, and the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is, in the English text it says understanding, but in the Hebrew text it's the word for discernment. It's an amazing word. It carries the idea of balancing out the intellect balancing out truth and error, the intellect balancing out precise view of truth so that you can discern between good and evil. The balances of good and evil are put on the balances. And that's how God uses this word. When you know Jesus, you have the ability now
To discern.
to balance out everything in life, to know what choices are good and what choices are bad.
Oh, that's lovely.
It is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so
Cool.
that leads us to the epilogue conclusion, which starts off by this in chapter 10, verse 1, the Proverbs of Solomon. Aha. What does that tell you?
There's more than one? I don't know.
Well, yes, but that's exactly what it said in chapter 1, verse 1. Proverbs of Solomon. So here is another framing device that frames the entire book of Introduction to Proverbs, chapters 1 through 10, 1 through 10:1 is framed with the phrase Proverbs of Solomon.
Oh, I love that.
In chapter 1, verse 7, the fear of the Lord. In chapter 9, verse 10, the fear of the Lord.
Yeah, it's the
frame,
same exact thing.
frame within a frame.
I think that's really encouraging to see even how it begins and ends, to know like there's that extra confirmation that this is the conclusion.
Yes. Yeah, so you're not just making this stuff up.
Right.
You're actually seeing that it's an intentional design that is framed by the exact same wording, which here's what I love. You know I love the statement. It's not just what it's saying.
But how it says it.
Yeah, no, not just how it says it, how it means. So God, by design, forces us to allow the text to do what?
Speak for itself.
You got it.
For sure.
I love it. So that there's no private interpretation. There's no chance. Well, there's always a chance, but there's very little chance if a person allows themselves to let the Bible speak for itself. It will always lead you to the meaning of the text rather than you trying to make it up. Okay, so Molly, here we go. I'm so excited. And, oh, by the way, in the studio today with us is our sound engineer, is the one and only Grace Cornell.
Oh, yeah.
Grace, I think this is your first time. Is it?
She can't hear us. She's right outside the studio.
She can read my lips. Can you read my lips? You read my lips? No? Then why are you saying no if you can't read my lips? How do you know what I'm saying if you're saying no? So, Molly, here's what we have. 12 lessons of wisdom. You have everything framed with the phrase Proverbs of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 1. Proverbs of Solomon, chapter 10, verse 1. I'm having trouble saying the word Proverbs.
Proverbs.
And then you have the next frame, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And then the next frame in chapter 9, verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And then in between all of that, you have the 12 lessons of wisdom,
Oh,
which
I love
we
that.
have. If we try to hit them all right now, I'm going to hit them all. First one, obey your father's correction. Don't neglect your mother's teaching. Number 2, choose your friends wisely. Number 3, turn at reproof, and I'll pour out my spirit to you. I'll make known my words unto you. Number 4, seek wisdom more than hidden treasure, and you'll understand the fear of the Lord. Find the knowledge of God, and knowledge will become pleasant to your soul.
Excellent.
Number 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean to your understanding. In all your ways, know Him, and He will direct your paths. And then when things start going really well, don't despise the chastening of the Lord. Neither be weary of His, what? Correction. Even when your vats are being full, your barns are full, your vats are overflowing with wine, that's when it's easy to do what? Forget God. Yeah. Psalm 103,
Yep.
when praise ceases, people forget. And so God, in lesson number 5, is teaching us when all these things are going well, it's easy to forget who gave you those blessings, and God brings things back into order in our lives. Just unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize that that's what God's trying to do. Lesson number 6. You ready?
I am so ready.
Get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Therefore, get wisdom. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom.
Just do it. Just get it.
The word get means acquire at a cost.
I love that.
Wisdom is going to cost you something. That's lesson number 6. Lesson number 7.
Yeah.
Lesson number 7 is here's what happens when you start to listen to folly's flattering lips. You can lose your vigor, value, virtue,
valor,
and
vitality. Yeah.
You lose all 5 of those things. That's the first warning.
Sounds like a set of essential oils.
Okay. And then after you you take the warning seriously and you do not give in to folly's flattering lips. You don't give in to someone that's subtly trying to move you in the wrong direction. Now you're developing wisdom and discernment to know when folly is leading you astray with false pride, false relationships, false everything. She is a flatterer. Which leads you to, next, her beguiling beauty. Be careful of her beguiling beauty. Number 8?
8, yep.
Be careful of her, be warned of her enticing touch. Flattering lips, beguiling beauty, enticing touch. So in chapter 6, there are 2 wisdom lessons. The first one is don't align yourself or don't be a co-signer.
Yep.
Don't stick up for your friend that is aligned himself or herself with other people that are of unknown character, that have shady character. If you have friends that are friends with people of unknown shady character, then
beware.
Stay away. In fact, stay away how?
Flee, right?
Yeah, flee like a gazelle. Like a gazelle. A gazelle will not allow itself to be captured. It'll kill itself before it's captured. And we're not promoting suicide, but
No.
Okay,
yeah,
so
but that seriousness and gravity of you do not want to be in this position because it will lead you to form an alliance with someone of very compromising character.
Yeah, then she's coming after you.
Yeah.
Once she knows that you are on her side, you become friends with her because she has been friends with your friend, then what happens next is you have been set up for what the next warning is in lesson number 9, which is be careful of her stealth, enticing touch. And so that's why the Father gives that warning. And then that leads us to number 11. Lesson 11 is amazing. That's where wisdom says she's a tree of life. Wisdom comes on the scene and says, I am more important, more desirable than anything that you can compare to in the universe.
That's beautiful. It also has a full definition of the fear of the Lord.
Hate what God hates and love what God loves. Yeah, I think it's
incredible.
Yeah, that is an amazing section here. And it kind of gives you a little bit of rest before you get to the 12th lesson, which is the epic battle between wisdom and folly. And wisdom and folly, pretty much folly is offering the counterfeit of what wisdom offers, which leads us now to the epilogue conclusion to the whole thing. And this is what it says. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. That's chapter 1, verse 1. In chapter 10:1, it says, the Proverbs of Solomon, a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is heaviness to his mother. The end. Okay? Now.
Seems pretty simple, but there's so much more to it.
So we got the phrase, the Proverbs of Solomon, which is a framing to chapter 1, verse 1.
Right.
But then listen to the people that are mentioned in here. Number 1, a wise son.
Okay, so you've got 2 components to that. You have wisdom and
the son.
Yeah.
And we know that each of the 12 lessons 10 of the 12 lessons started with what? My son. Yeah, so that's how you knew that they were the lessons for the son. The times that wisdom speaks, she does not use the my son. And then the last 12th lesson, she doesn't use my son as well. She focuses on the simple person and those who lack discernment. So it's actually 9 out of the 12 have my son.
I think, is this the first time wise son is used?
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so Proverbs of Solomon, chapter 10, verse 1, Proverbs of Solomon, a wise son makes a glad father. So you've got 3 people here, wisdom, son, and father.
Oh, that's awesome.
Now,
in that second sentence there.
Yep, in the third sentence. But a foolish son is heaviness to his mother.
See, now you have the direct contrast
of folly
and son again.
And mother.
And then, the mother,
So it's amazing. You've got wisdom, son, father, folly, son, mother. This is such an amazing ending to all of these 12 lessons because God is presenting to the son who he can become or who he will become.
So it's almost like everything's climaxed into this one defining moment.
Which brings you back to lesson number 1. If you miss lesson number 1, you miss it all.
Let's go back to lesson
Obey
number 1.
your father's correction and don't neglect your mother's Torah, your mother's teaching.
Oh, wow.
God brings the two most important people back into the son's life. Son, have you obeyed your father's correction? If so, then you're probably a wise son right now. Or have you neglected your mother's teaching? If so, then you are a burden or a sorrow to your mother. God gives this son a picture of who he can become. He's either going to become a wise son or a foolish son. The choice is his. You know, it's worth noting, Molly, that in the introductory statement, it says the wisdom of Solomon, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. It mentions son before it mentions king.
That is interesting. Not really how the world would do something.
What's that?
I said not really how the world would do something.
No, if I was writing this and I was the king, I would probably say something about me being the king. But God understands, helping us to understand that if you want to be a great king, you have to first be a great son or an obedient son.
It'd be kind of like this. Hey, Mark, what do you do? Versus, hey, Mark, who's your dad?
Oh, interesting. Oh, I like that. So, Molly, that's the ending.
That's crazy.
God brings this entire thing to an end with this incredible scene of wisdom, folly, the son in both realms, the wise son or the foolish son, along with his mother and father.
I think it's also incredible, too, that it presents things very clearly for the son. There's not another option there. You're either going to become wise or foolish. And if you are not intentional in deciding, then, I mean, you have your answer. You're going to be foolish. So that's going to go deeper than just who he is as a person. It's going to affect his parents.
That's a great insight, and here's why. Everyone who's listening to this needs to understand that our primary role in this life is to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. That's what God gave us in the very beginning. As we have children, as our families grow, it's never too late, and we never stop being parents. It is our primary responsibility to continue to teach, to mentor, to be an example to our children, no matter what age, that there is a path that leads to wisdom and there is a path that leads to foolishness. I think that a parent, no matter where they are in life, let's say they have a difficult child, it is essential that we as parents grow in wisdom and knowledge and discernment so that we can pass that on. That's why this is so important. The world's falling apart right now, and if you look at, if you interviewed some of the people that are doing some of the hideous things right now, Molly, it's not 100 out of 100. It's 1,000 out of 1,000 kids that have grown up to be terrible people that are doing terrible things right now, and it can always be traced back to the relationship with their father and their mother.
And to go along with that, so my dad is a forensic psychologist, and he interviews people who are clinically crazy, insane. And he said that, he'll go in to interview them and everything, and he kind of is one of the people who decides if they're crazy or not. So he's dealing with the lowest of the low, depraved people. And so when he goes in there and talks to them, he says it's not 1% that's like good parents, or not 2%, 3%. He says 100 out of 100 people do not have solid parents, like solid marriage or parental situation or whatever. He says 100% of them had something messed up with the parents, or maybe a neglectful father or an abandoned mother or something like that that affected this behavior.
Drugs or parent in prison. But it's what the point I'm trying to get across is it's never too late. A parent can always be redeemed. And a parent can start reflecting the image of God. So I'm working with a young man right now, and he was in jail on drugs, all these things, had 5 kids, and he's doing an amazing job right now in his parenting. He's coming full circle, and he's recognizing his responsibilities, and his kids are responding. So it's never too late. One of the things that I think is important to note here, As I was thinking about how we're going to conclude this, we had a young man several years ago. He was walking his bike past our headquarters here. It was during the Guild. I don't know if it was the year you were here for the Guild, but he had. You could tell he was a little bit autistic, which is not a big deal. Some autistic children are extremely smart. They need a little bit more focus and attention and order, and I started talking to him, and it was a really hot day. It was like 95 degrees. He was sitting under our tree with his bike and his belongings. He had his belongings on a cart that was behind his bike, and my heart went out to him, and he was extremely intelligent, and he was around 30 years old, I'd say 30, 32. And as I started talking to him, I just really felt like this was my opportunity to do something, and I offered him a place to stay that night. We were supposed to get some rain, and so he stayed in one of our Lamplighter houses. And then the next day, invited him to come to breakfast. He came to breakfast, and I shared it with all the kids at the Guild, and everyone was excited, that we were reaching out to this person, and we eventually. A few days went by, and I thought, we got the bindery here, the printing operation. Why not try it? And I remember, we've got this bindery and this printing operation. Why not give him a job, right?
Oh, yes. I remember this story.
You do?
Yeah. That was actually my Guild. I remember hearing about the situation, and we got really excited, like, oh, maybe this is going to be an opportunity for something there.
Yeah, I was really super excited about it, and we finally put him to work, and he was doing amazing. He loved it. He was like a different person. But then I'll never forget one evening after work, I just started asking him about where he'd been and what was his background, and he immediately started trash talking his father.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was like he said, he goes, I'm homeless because of my dad. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, my dad threw me out. And I'm thinking like, okay, you're 32 years old, and so you were living at home, and why? And so I just said, well, what happened? Why'd your dad throw you out? And he goes, well, I lost another job, and he got fired from another job, and I'm just thinking like, okay, some people just don't have an understanding of autism, and and they just need to be a little bit more, compassionate and understanding. And I thought, that's my background. Years ago, I was a special education teacher, and I thought this is my area. But day after day, he continued to become a more and more negative, and eventually, became uncontrollable. To where he started trash talking some of the staff and threatening, and so finally, I had to talk to him and say, like, you're not going to be able to stay here. You're causing division, and some people are afraid of you. And I tried to give him a chance, and he just got more and more. And it's amazing that at the very last day, the person he brought up the most was his father.
Wow.
He's blaming his father for all of this. And I can imagine, his father's he was unable, and this is what I found. Not only did he have problems with his dad, but he had severe problems with, guess what? Being corrected.
Oh.
If he was corrected in any way, he started having these tantrums. And I'm thinking, like, it doesn't make any difference if you have autism. It doesn't make any difference what you have. We all, everyone, can understand simple correction. If you're unable to receive correction, if you're unable to obey your father's correction, then guess what? You are going to be a fool to your father and a heaviness to your mother. And this young man became that. And I thought, wow. And then on the flip side, okay, so he's gone, right?
Yeah.
On the flip side, who do we get for the next summer? Noah and Barron.
Yeah.
Two young men who listened to the correction of their parents, understood and embraced the Torah of their mother. And what did you see? You saw two young men that were just beaming and successful and growing. Molly, I gave them the keys of the kingdom here at Lamplighter, and they just did everything. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I saw from 2 different guilds, I saw a young man who brought shame to his mother and two young men that made a glad father and a very happy mom and a very happy Dr. Hamby.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Oh, and a very happy me.
A very happy staff, very happy everything.
Yeah, it's amazing what
Yeah.
happens.
Well, yeah, those who bless others,
We'll be blessed.
will be blessed. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were. So, Molly, that brings us to an end.
Yeah.
The 12 Lessons of Wisdom.
Wow.
We're going to be titling this in the book. The new title is?
Unbelievable.
No. The new title is
Hidden Insight.
Hidden Insight.
Okay, no. Hidden
Insight.
Sight.
Yeah, or Hidden Insight. Yeah, we're gonna make that the title.
That
and
actually was a title Barron came up with.
oh no, don't say that. I'm gonna have to give him royalties the rest of my life.
He was like, Hidden Insight, Hidden Insight.
I was thinking it before he said it.
They were both thinking of it at the same time. It was one of those creative collaborations, and they both, yeah.
So, Molly, as we bring this to a close, what books would you recommend? What audio dramas would you recommend for our families to grow in this idea of receiving correction and growing in wisdom?
Okay, so what we were talking about just now reminded me a lot of the book Raising a Modern Day Knight. So a lot of what we talked about was the content of raising a son. And he puts it, Raising a Modern Day Knight is in this book. I'm almost done with that. I'm on my last chapter. It is incredible for fathers looking to raise their
Raising a Modern Day Knight is a staple for every home. Simply, you must have a will to obey, a work to do, and then a woman to love. And rejecting passivity, accept responsibility, lead courageously, expect a greater reward for doing so. That's an amazing book. There's one, though, that I think would be great for children of all ages, and it has to do with 4 children that are learning some very valuable lessons from a man named Mr. Learning.
Oh, Crown of Success.
I think that is one of our greatest books, teaching children to listen to a correction and to avoid who? Folly and pride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one is great for younger kids, and it is available as an audio drama and a book. The audio drama
I think the audio
is
drama is
almost
better.
a little better. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in a similar vein by Aloe, she's really good at allegories, but she did Palace of Deceit, which
I was just going to
is
mention Palace of Deceit. So those would be my
absolutely incredible.
2 main books that I would recommend.
So for older kids and adults, I would recommend Palace of Deceit because it's a little more advanced, more in-depth.
And then also, let's close on this one, Sir Knight of the Splendid Way. It's a knight who wants to find the king, but the only way that you can see the king is if you keep your armor on, and the only way you can keep your armor on is if you have a pure heart.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
our students for the Master's Guild read that, and all of them wrote positive reviews. They all loved it.
And that comes both in audio drama and in book form. The lady who gave it to me was coming from Africa, and she said the missionary lady who gave it to her said this will be like getting a kiss from God himself.
That's amazing. And for that one, I do recommend the book.
Oh, I like them both.
Yeah. Okay, so depending on what you want.
Yeah. Is there anything for real young children? I would say yes, Little Threads.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, that teaches children how to untie the knots of sin, one confession and prayer at a time. And it's written by the same woman who wrote Stepping Heavenward, Elizabeth Prentice.
Oh, I love Elizabeth Prentice.
Yeah.
She has very sweet writing style.
Yeah.
I also think Hedge of Thorns, we were talking about correction.
Ooh, whoa, Hedge of Thorns. That's probably one of our best-selling books here.
Yeah, and that one, I mean, adults have read it, kids have read it.
Yeah.
It seems to be very versatile.
Hedge of Thorns, I think, is still our bestseller. And I think that brings us to the end here.
We could keep going.
No, I think if people
Believe
want to
you
learn
me.
more, they can go to lamplighter.net or call us toll-free.
1-888, the letter A, gospel.
Yeah, or 888-246.
7735.
You got it. And if they do call, we have an amazing
We love
representatives.
to talk about the books and to kind of walk you through what might be best for you and your children. Whatever you're looking for, whether you'd like to see wisdom cultivated in them, or if maybe they're struggling with lying or dishonesty, we know the books pretty well because we love to read them. So we'd love to talk to you about what might be a good fit.
Amen. And with that said, we will say, Sababa.
Oh, so sababa.
God bless everyone. We'll look forward to doing this again.
You've been listening to Fastened Like Nails, a presentation of Lamplighter Ministries. Our mission is to make ready a people prepared for the Lord by building Christlike character, one story at a time. To learn more about our family collection of rare books, dramatic audios, or guild programs, visit lamplighter.net. To hear more podcasts, search for Fastened Like Nails wherever you listen to podcasts.
This is a story about a hedge.
He always warns me not to get too close to the hedge.
Not an ordinary hedge,
The thorn is as long as my hand.
but something curious.
Like they'll pierce straight through you.
Something beyond.
No one must know the truth. What is it? What's on the other side?
And John will do anything to find out.
We'll build a ladder. I'll climb the rope to the top and down the other side. I think it's already working. There's already a hole.
Discover the secret.
I've never seen anything like it.
Discover the power.
The most beautiful place on earth.
Discover the truth.
I have heard some things.
It might just change the way you look at life.
Never, ever tell the secret. No, John, don't!
Discover the secret. Discover the Hedge of Thorns on the next Lamplighter Theater.
Get ready for a spiritual action-adventure story like no other.
Thou knowest the call. It is inscribed on thine heart.
An aged knight gives his last instructions to his beloved student.
Am I ready?
Fear nothing, only be strong and courageous.
But Sir Constans soon faces a treacherous sorcerer knight.
What seeks he? He seeks the king's city. And who has ever found it?
In the name of the king, I can do all!
And now, rise, Sir Constant, Knight of the Splendid Way.
Wilt thou surrender thy sword, or shall it be battle first?
Fool that I was!
Sir Knight of the Splendid Way on the next Lamplighter Theater.